Hello, my name is Kevin Probst, and I come to you from my small corner of the world where I observe the craziness of our culture and wonder at how we got here. I write articles in Substack. I write about politics and religion and theology, worldview, culture, a few other things. But today I would like to address how Americans are being lured by a new religion. And God was very purposeful when he created man. He had a specific plan and a meaningful purpose for the existence of man. And the primary role of man was to worship and glorify their Almighty God. And this desire to worship is innate. It's weaved into our DNA by our Creator. And our refusal to worship the true and living God does not eliminate our need to worship. We all will worship someone or something. These are various religions about us to commit to and multiple idols to choose from. Perhaps the most popular idol to worship is ourselves. A perfect storm of heresy develops when a fraction of mankind who wants to be worshipped presents themselves to a larger group who seeks to satisfy their insatiable need to worship. And the one and only God is shelved while we worship various idols in his stead. Many find it difficult to believe that there's an elite group or a cabal of powerful and wealthy men who seek extensive, if not complete, control of our society. Those who have attained such power on the global level will not allow any church, especially a Christian church, to exist in its realm that is stationed above the state. These globalists only accept Christians that are liberal and global. In order to attain and maintain the power that they desire, they must invade and infiltrate and destroy the main obstacles in their way. And that would be the true body of believing Christians, the church, and the most powerful and wealthy nation on earth, America. This is not something new that has recently arrived on the world stage. There have always been opposition to the church since Satan's first appearance in the garden. The goal is to destroy the church, radically transform society. The source of that kind of power lies in the governance of nations. And the agenda can be realized if they can successfully hijack the power to govern. And so their success is dependent on their willingness to play the long game. And because of their long-term commitment, occasional setbacks, temporary defeats are simply inconvenient small bumps in the road. And so let's map out the course that they have taken to achieve their goals. Let me discuss postmodern relativism. They've used postmodern relativism to infect our mind with doubts regarding the one who said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life," John 14:6. They declare there is no absolute truth, nor absolute morality. This relativism is not an individual relativism, it's a communal relativism. And with no truth or morality, all that is left are stories and narratives. And so each community has its own story. And the individual has lost his importance. He's only relevant if he has value to the community. And if God no longer is the source for morality, then morality is decided by consensus, by the will of those who have obtained the most power in our society. In order to convince the masses to replace absolute morality with relativism, they must be cut off from the foundational principles that they learned in their past. And so history has to be revised. The character of our founding fathers must be besmirched, and statues must be torn down, and a new narrative must be written to replace the original narrative. Consider, for instance, the narrative of the LGBTQ community. They often declare that historical figures of the past have joined their movement posthumously and declare them homosexual with no evidence upon which to base their claim. Elton John can even say that Jesus is gay because there is no absolute truth. If all truth is relative, true history can be erased and rewritten to fit any narrative. And so the power goes to whichever group has the strongest narrative and the ability to propagate that narrative. Talk of individual rights, of freedom of speech, of being created in the image of God, or having a personal relationship with God, it cannot be a part of the postmodern narrative. These things are too individualistic. Let me address Neo-Marxist critical theory. They have used Neo-Marxist critical theory to agitate the masses towards social reform. Original Marxism was based on economic theory. A revolt of the common laborer was necessary for economic reform. The proletariat, the collective group of the working class people, were encouraged to rise up against the bourgeois, the collective middle class of people who are committed to materialism and conventional attitudes. And so Marx's plan for economic revolt was a massive failure. His dream failed to materialize. He believed that war would break out in Europe, World War I, and after that war, the workers would not return to their jobs. He believed that the war would birth a revolution among the workers, and they would overthrow the middle class of merchants and business owners. Workers of the world, unite. You have nothing to lose but your chains. That is a phrase referenced in the Communist Manifesto. Workers of all lands, unite. Those are the words written on Karl Marx's tombstone. This plan to initiate an economical revolution within society was supposed to pave the way to install a system of communism. It failed miserably. The basis of the plan was to inspire those who were oppressed to rise up against their oppressors. Workers versus business owners never happened because the workers were recompensed for their labor. Too many were paid too well. The longer they worked and the more years they contributed to their employer, the more comforts they accumulated in their lives. They didn't hate their boss. In fact, if they continued to work hard, they may one day become the boss. Economic oppression was not working, so they looked to create a revolution through social oppression. They targeted half the population of the world by claiming women to be oppressed by men. They included all minorities and homosexuals among the oppressed. The neo-Marxist critical theory targets the entire foundation of Western civilization. These include religion and race and family, academia, among others. The chief of all oppressors in critical race theory is the white Christian heterosexual male. These men are stacked at the bottom of the social totem pole and are portrayed as master oppressors of all other oppressed groups. The old theory of Marxism was irrelevant and inept. A redo was necessary. Marxism now has a new and fresh look. A new verbiage is used to describe it. In its new dressed-up form, the followers of cultural Marxism are portrayed as those who truly and genuinely care for the oppressed. They are woke. They are the enlightened ones, the ones chosen to cast the light of socialism on a darkened society and rescue the oppressed. They are deeply committed, very self-righteous in their cause. They batter and destroy the heretics who refuse to join their cult with words like racism and privilege. Racism has always existed throughout all of history. It always will exist because it is an expression of sin in the heart of man. The solution to this sin is not government or eloquent speeches or electing a certain politician to office. The solution to racism is confessing this sin to God and receiving forgiveness. Bowing down in a posture of worship to those of another race and asking them forgiveness is futile. When the soul is inflamed with God's love, racism is no longer a problem. The neo-Marxists go off the rails of reason when they spread their message that racism exists only in people whose skin color is white. If our founding fathers happen to be white, then the country they founded is racist. If your church or your church denomination was organized by white men, it is systemically racist. Critical theory reverts to stirring hatred for others based on the color of their skin. This contradicts the dream of Martin Luther King. He said, "I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character." The strategy of the neo-Marxists is to divide and conquer, thereby paving the way for a revolution that would result in a socialist or a communist state. They would turn women against men, and non-Christians against Christians, and black people against white people, and gay people against straight people, and poor people against rich people, and the list goes on and on. And finally, let's discuss Friedrich Nietzsche's call for a few good men. The enemies of the church have aligned with Friedrich Nietzsche and his belief that God does not exist, and they have adopted his strategy of imposing this belief on others. Nietzsche believed the existence of God was an unreasonable premise. However, he was more honest than your typical atheist. He admitted that eliminating God from society would reap dire consequences. He proclaimed in his parable of a madman that God is dead and we have killed him. His statement is contradictory. If we have killed God, he must have existed before his death. Or perhaps Nietzsche was simply referring to God as an idea. Nietzsche composed his poem as a warning to mankind that having killed God, truth and morality have also been destroyed, and nihilism and chaos were sure to follow. And he seemed to think that the good behavior promoted by those who called themselves Christians was actually a good and stabilizing force in society, even if the God they worshiped did not exist. Nietzsche believed that a great void was created when God was thrown overboard, and therefore strong-willed men must fill the void. They must create a new truth and a new standard of morality, and this new way must be forced upon others to save mankind from self-destruction. The new truth being forced upon us is irrational, because it contradicts the absolute truth of our Creator God. The deception of new truth convinces the masses that a man can become a woman by simply deciding and declaring it. The traditional lines of morality are trespassed by declaring males can use female bathrooms and enter into female locker rooms and participate in female athletics. And powerful and well-educated people appear to be incapable of defining what a woman is. Why, men can even have babies. So, who are Nietzsche's strong-willed people in modern society who are determined to transform our world? They are men like Klaus Schwab and Bill Gates and George Soros. Elon Musk is a Renaissance man, a sort of Superman who has massive impact on our society, but unlike the others, Musk does not want to depopulate the world. He promotes just the opposite. He does not oppose freedom of speech or our right to bear arms. He has spent millions to preserve our unalienable rights, and in doing so, he is no longer accepted by the radical elitist. Rather, he is deeply hated and seen as a formidable obstacle to their intended agenda. In these days of turmoil, there is a deep longing for peace. There is no peace to be found in these cheap and unfulfilling substitutes. Real peace and contentment comes to the author of peace. I have said these things to you, Jesus said, that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but take heart. I have overcome the world. John 16:33. Well, thank you for watching and for listening and for reading. And if you are interested in this sort of material, I wish that you would return. And please follow me by clicking on the subscribe button. I would love to read your opinions. Please click on leave a comment button to share your thoughts. And if you know of any others who might benefit from this type of material, please click on the share button. Thank you so much.